It started like any other quiet Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee on my porch when Whiskers, my fluffy, slightly overweight cat, decided to do his usual royal inspection of the neighborhood. He strutted across the yard, tail high, completely unaware that he was about to cause a suburban meltdown. The moment his paw touched the sidewalk, yes, that sidewalk, I heard it. A gasp. A long theatrical gasp, like someone had just witnessed a murder. I turned, and there she was, Karen, hair frosted to the heavens, clutching her phone like a loaded weapon. She stared at Whiskers like he'd just keyed her SUV, and then she screamed, "He's trespassing!" I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. Big mistake. Her eyes narrowed like she was about to summon a neighborhood tribunal. "That sidewalk is my property!" she hissed, pointing like she was casting a spell. I tried to explain that sidewalks are public, but she was already marching inside, muttering something about authorities and repeat offenders. I followed Whiskers with my eyes. He had now plopped himself down directly in front of her house, licking his paw with zero awareness, or maybe pure disrespect. And then came the sound, the beep, the unmistakable tone of someone calling 911 over a cat. At first, I thought she was bluffing, but she was dead serious. "Yes, operator, it's back. The cat. It's on my property again," she said, with the dramatic tension of someone reporting a home invasion. I couldn't believe it. She was using emergency services over Whiskers. The operator's voice was faint but calm. I swear I heard them stifle a chuckle. Karen wasn't having it. "It's just sitting there, watching me. It's threatening." I had to step in. "Ma'am, it's a cat. He watches everyone. It's literally all he does." She turned and glared. "You trained him to do this, didn't you?" I didn't even know how to respond. Was she serious? Did she think I had some kind of feline espionage program? Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the flashing lights appeared at the end of the street. A police cruiser. For a cat. And that's when I knew. Things were about to spiral completely out of control. You know those neighborhoods where everything looks picture perfect? Manicured lawns, symmetrical hedges, mailboxes that all look like they were cloned? Yeah, I live in one of those places. The kind of neighborhood where people care more about HOA rules than basic human decency. And at the heart of it all, Karen. Not a metaphorical Karen, not the meme. A real-life, clipboard-wielding, passive-aggressively smiling Karen. She doesn't just live in the neighborhood, she is the neighborhood. President of the HOA 3 years in a row, self-appointed guardian of peace, order, and apparently, feline control. It all started when the HOA issued a new rule that pets should not be seen unattended on communal property. Fair enough, right? Nobody wants unleashed dogs running wild. But Karen took it. Personally. She added her own unspoken clause. Especially not that cat. And by that cat, she meant my Whiskers, my snarky, too lazy to care 12-pound house cat. Now Whiskers isn't a roamer. He's more of a porch lounger. But sometimes he'll wander a bit, especially when the sun hits the sidewalk just right. And that's what triggered round 2 of Karen versus Whiskers. One morning, I'm in my driveway, about to head out. I see Whiskers across the street, sunbathing like he owns the damn place. And there she is, Karen, wearing her signature wide-brim visor and pushing her little HOA clipboard cart like she's patrolling a military base. She stops, glares, pulls out her phone, and writes something down. I knew in my gut it was about him. The next day, I got a notice taped to my door, not mailed, not emailed, taped, like some mafia warning. Violation, unleashed pet, on HOA-maintained property. My cat, the one who literally naps 80% of the day, a threat. I laughed. I honestly thought it was a prank. But nope, this was only the beginning. I ignored the notice, figured it would blow over. But Karen? She doesn't blow over. She escalates. A week later, I woke up to find little yard signs around the neighborhood, homemade, laminated, probably using her own printer. They read, "Reminder, keep pets off communal spaces." One had a cartoon image of a cat behind bars. I couldn't make this up. Whiskers became a public enemy overnight. Neighbors I'd never spoken to before were suddenly side-eyeing me on morning walks. One even asked if I knew what kind of bacteria a sidewalk cat might be dragging into the soil. I blinked at him like he just asked me if my toaster had rabies. Then came the community meeting. These happen once a month in the community clubhouse. Normally, it's 10 people arguing over fence paint and whether or not solar lights are too tacky. But this time, packed, standing room only. And right there, in the center like she was hosting a TED Talk, stood Karen. She had a PowerPoint, slides, charts, photos of my cat from different angles. I swear one looked like a Bigfoot sighting, blurry, dramatic, circled in red. "This feline has violated the perimeter a total of 9 times, she announced. 9. Documented. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. Whiskers didn't even attend, and somehow he was being prosecuted like a war criminal. I raised my hand, tried to reason. He's just a cat. He doesn't even leave our block. Karen snapped. That's not the point. Rules are rules. Another neighbor chimed in. He pooped in my flower bed. I knew for a fact that wasn't Whiskers. He's strictly a litter box man. But logic had left the room. This was a trial, and Karen was the judge, jury, and full-blown executioner. The board voted to revisit pet policies, which meant Karen would be writing the revisions herself, because of course she would. 2 days later, I got a letter. Certified mail. Karen had pushed through a new clause. Any pet observed more than 2.5 feet beyond the homeowner's property line may be subject to fines of $50 per occurrence. 2.5 feet. She literally measured and wrote it into law. I laughed out loud. Whiskers meowed like he knew we were living in a sitcom. But I was done laughing when the following week, I got my first fine. A photo came with it. Whiskers laying belly up near the edge of the sidewalk. It even had a timestamp. Violation none 1. This woman had set up a surveillance operation. At that point, I could have leashed him, kept him inside. But something in me snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I just really hated how smug Karen looked every time she drove by. So I did the opposite. I bought Whiskers a little hat, a fedora, and I started taking photos of him on various neighborhood landmarks, the mailbox, the fountain, even the gazebo. Then I made a calendar. Whiskers, around the block. Gave copies to neighbors. Some loved it. Others, the Karen crowd, not so much. But one photo, Whiskers laying across Karen's sidewalk with sunglasses photoshopped on, went semi-viral in our community Facebook group. That was the match in the powder keg. The next morning, I woke up to a noise in my yard. Karen, with a tape measure, measuring distance between my porch and the sidewalk like she was mapping a crime scene. I stepped outside and asked what she was doing. She didn't even blink. Just gathering evidence. I told her she was obsessed. She said, "No, I'm dedicated." I started filming. She told me to stop. I didn't. She called the cops. I kid you not. She called the police again. "Yes, hello, I'd like to report harassment by a neighbor's pet owner." The dispatcher must have recognized her voice because the officer who showed up seemed tired, like he already regretted being assigned to Karen duty. He talked to both of us, told me to keep the cat away from her property, and advised Karen to maybe chill a little. She was furious, claimed the officer was biased, said he clearly favored lawlessness. I thought it might end there, but Karen's not someone who gives up when she's lost. She doubles down. The next week, she filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, requested an official restraining zone be established around her sidewalk, suggested we install pet detection sensors. The board actually entertained it. That's when I knew we were living in a full-blown dystopia run by an HOA queenpin. Then came the Karen cam, a motion-activated camera aimed right at my driveway. I spotted it one morning when the sun hit just right and the lens sparkled like a sniper scope. I confronted her. She said it was for property protection. I asked, "Protection from what? Paw prints?" She didn't laugh. She never laughs. She just adjusted her visor and walked back inside like a Bond villain plotting her next move. I considered filing a counter-complaint. But what would I even write? "Please stop stalking my cat?" It sounded insane. Because it was insane, at this point, Whiskers had become sort of a local legend. A few neighbors began quietly rooting for him, leaving treats, making jokes. One guy made a TikTok where he narrated Whiskers' sidewalk stroll like it was a wildlife documentary. Karen tried to report him for harassment via satire. No one knew what that meant. The TikTok hit 100K views. That's when the local news got wind. Yep, news. A reporter reached out to me asking if I'd be willing to comment on A community cat conflict turned civil war. I declined, but someone else didn't. Karen gave a full interview, said she feared for the sanitation and moral safety of the community, called Whiskers a menace, said I was radicalizing local youth with disrespect for rules. The anchor couldn't keep a straight face, neither could the internet. Karen got roasted in the comments. Memes exploded. Whiskers and sunglasses. Karen with red lasers coming out of her eyes. Live, laugh, leash t-shirts started showing up at the dog park. Then something incredible happened. The HOA board resigned. All at once. The president said in an email, "We didn't sign up for cat court." Karen was left standing alone, furious, clipboard in hand, rules in disarray. But even then, she didn't stop. She ran for interim board control and won, unopposed, because no one wanted the job. That's when she launched Phase 2, but I'll tell you about that in the next part, because that's where the fur really starts to fly. You'd think after public meltdowns, viral memes, HOA resignations, and 2 police visits, things would quiet down. Maybe Karen would finally let go. Maybe Whiskers would just retire to the porch and live out his days in peace. But that's not how stories like this go, is it? Not in this neighborhood. Not when Karen had just taken control of the HOA like she was staging a suburban coup. And not when she had a new plan, one that made the Sidewalk saga feel like a warm-up act. It began subtly. Flyers started popping up overnight, tucked under windshield wipers, slipped through mail slots. They were professionally printed, color-coded, and titled in bold, "Neighborhood Watch Relaunch, Securing Our Streets." It sounded normal, maybe even responsible. Until you flipped to page 2 and saw the headline, "Unsupervised Animals and the Threat to Property Value." And then, the real kicker, a grainy, zoomed-in photo of Whiskers mid-yawn, under the caption, "Persistent Intruder." I wish I were joking. She had turned a sleepy, slow-moving house cat into the villain of her neighborhood newsletter. The flyer called for increased community vigilance, urging residents to log and report animal movement patterns, and document repeat offenders. This wasn't just a policy anymore. This was surveillance. This was war. And Karen? She wasn't working alone anymore. She had recruited. The neighborhood watch team included 4 other retirees with too much time and binoculars, and one guy named Bruce who used to be in mall security and still wore the uniform. They started making rounds, walking the block in reflective vests like it was a patrol beat. And get this, they actually carried clipboards. They stopped in front of people's homes. They took notes. They tracked squirrels. I watched one of them squat behind a bush like he was hiding from a military drone, eyes locked on Whiskers as he sniffed a bush. At first, it was hilarious. I filmed them from my window, uploaded clips with dramatic music. Day 47, the watch intensifies. People laughed, but then things got weird. One afternoon, I came home to find chalk markings on my sidewalk. At first, I thought it was just kids, but no, it was code, literal code, colored X's and arrows pointing toward different homes. I followed the markings and realized they led to properties with pets, dogs, cats, even a tortoise 2 streets over. Karen had developed a system, a literal, mapped-out surveillance trail. That's when I knew. She wasn't just trying to get rid of Whiskers. She was building an empire of control. The next blow hit in the form of a formal citation. Apparently, I'd violated the new roaming animal clause, which, according to Karen's fresh-off-the-printer bylaws, now applied even if the animal wasn't seen, but was known to frequently occupy unauthorized areas. It was hearsay. She was fining people based on vibes. I confronted her, asked how she could prove anything. She smiled and pointed at her phone. Ring footage, dated, time-stamped, uploaded to the Watch Cloud. Yeah, she had created a Google Drive folder called Watch Cloud, where her squad uploaded clips of every animal sighting, as if cats wandering 5 feet into someone's yard were security threats. The final straw came when I received a summons. Not from the police. Oh no, they had given up on Karen months ago. But from the HOA Tribunal Committee, a newly formed subdivision made entirely of, you guessed it, Karen's watch crew. The meeting was to be held in the clubhouse. The subject, ongoing threat posed by resident feline Nanjwar Whiskers. I didn't even know what to say. She had literally given my cat a case number. So I did the only thing that made sense. I brought Whiskers with me, on a leash, in a tiny bow tie. We walked into that meeting like it was a red carpet event. Karen gasped like I had brought a live grenade. One of the watch members clutched his clipboard like it was a shield. Karen launched into her PowerPoint. Yes, another one. This one had new charts, incursion density, patrol interference, emotional damage ratings. She claimed that Whiskers' habitual lounging had created a psychological atmosphere of rebellion. I swear I saw Bruce nod like he was at a military briefing. Then Karen pointed to a slide showing my cat sleeping under a tree. "This is what infiltration looks like," she said. The room was silent, until Whiskers sneezed, loudly. Someone laughed. Then another person chuckled. And just like that, the illusion broke. The rest of the HOA board, what was left of it, looked at each other like they were waking up from a spell. One finally said, "I think we've gone too far." Karen turned, betrayed. "You don't understand. He's watching us." But by then, the watch was cracking. People were leaving the group chat. Bruce retired his vest. Even the laminated flyers stopped appearing. Still, Karen wasn't done. She pivoted, installed a sign on her lawn, "Protected by Feline Surveillance Watch." The irony nearly broke me. That night, Whiskers curled up right under that sign and fell asleep. A neighbor took a picture, captioned it, "He's owning the sidewalk now." It went viral again. But here's the thing, Karen didn't stop. She may have lost support, she may have lost control of the watch, but her obsession? It had only evolved. Because the next week, I noticed that something strange on the neighborhood app. A listing. Seeking volunteers for pet behavior correction group, training provided. The post didn't have her name, but everyone knew. The emojis, the passive-aggressive tone. It was pure Karen. She was forming a new unit, something darker, something more hands-on. And that, unfortunately, leads into what happened next. The chapter where things stop being just funny and start to cross a line. But I'll save that for the next part, because what's coming next? Yeah, it's personal. Just when I thought it couldn't escalate any further, after the HOA trials, the watch patrols, and Karen's PowerPoint propaganda, she somehow managed to take things to an entirely new level of unhinged. It was no longer just about Whiskers or the sidewalk, or even her irrational hatred for all things feline. No, Karen had convinced herself that she was in the middle of a war, a territorial dispute of epic proportions, and she had given it a name, Operation Sidewalk Sovereignty. I found that out because she printed actual pamphlets and slid them under doors like she was launching a political campaign. They were color-coded, complete with strategic maps of the block and red arrows showing primary invasion routes, where, according to her, Whiskers and his gang were breaching personal perimeters. I wish I was exaggerating, but she had actually drawn little cat icons wearing ski masks. This was the Karen version of D-Day, and Whiskers was apparently the general. At first, everyone assumed she was joking. I mean, no sane person plots military tactics against a house cat. But then people started noticing changes. Tiny flags staked along the sidewalk outside Karen's house, red ones, spaced every few feet. Signs appeared. No loitering. Active patrol zone. She even got a custom banner printed that said CATS equals Citizens Against Trespassing Strays. That's when we realized this wasn't just her latest meltdown. This was her full-blown campaign. And she wanted backup. She started knocking on doors, clipboard in hand, trying to get neighbors to pledge allegiance to her Sidewalk Security Coalition. Some joined, mostly the same ones who still believed the moon landing was faked, but most of us just watched in disbelief. Until one morning, something happened that made even the doubters pause. It was 6:12 a.m. I know the time exactly because that's when my phone blew up. Karen had posted a full-length video to the neighborhood group, complete with dramatic music, timestamp overlays, and shaky camera work like it was recorded by a war correspondent. The footage? Whiskers, casually trotting across her front walk, then stopping to stretch right under her "Do Not Enter" sign. She had slowed the clip down like it was a scene from a crime drama, added black and white filters. Then she came on camera herself, in a reflective vest, whispering, "This is what we're up against. He knows the rules, and he mocks them." The comments were immediate. Half the neighborhood was laughing so hard people were spitting out coffee. The other half was oddly quiet. probably trying to figure out if she was serious or just had a little too much time and too many ink cartridges. But Karen didn't stop there. The next day, she installed what she proudly called a cat deterrence zone. It consisted of motion-activated sprinklers, a small speaker that played eagle screeches, and a weird metallic mat that made crunching sounds when stepped on. I watched from my window as Whiskers approached the setup, looked at it for a good 10 seconds, then casually stepped around it and laid down right next to the mat like it was his new sunbathing lounge. The sprinkler triggered anyway and soaked Karen's begonias. She came running out like a stormtrooper had breached her base, yelling at the bushes and flailing a towel, screaming, "He's mocking me!" The whole thing felt like a live-action cartoon. Then came the night of the invasion. That's what Karen called it anyway. For the rest of us, it was just a normal Tuesday, but for Karen, it was the moment her paranoia hit its peak. Apparently, Whiskers wasn't alone that night. Two other neighborhood cats, Luna from across the street and Pickles from the corner, had joined him on what Karen later described as a coordinated nighttime infiltration. The three of them were caught on her motion cameras strolling across her lawn in what did, admittedly, look like a synchronized mission. She edited the footage and added night vision effects, slow motion cuts, and the mission, impossible theme. It was oddly impressive. She uploaded the video with the caption, "They've formed an alliance. The invasion has begun." But here's the part where it got really weird. The next morning, Karen called for an emergency HOA assembly, which, mind you, she still led because no one else had the energy to fight her for it. She printed handouts, labeled Cat Wars Phase 4. It included detailed drawings of enemy patterns, schedules of cat movement, and, brace yourself, a full color-coded map showing enemy encampments, i.e., where cats were regularly seen napping. She proposed infrared cameras on all street corners, asked for volunteers to take night shifts, and introduced what she called the Tactical Enforcement Protocol, which was basically a glorified plan to set up cardboard cutouts of wolves in people's yards. People tried to object. Someone pointed out that cats literally live here. Another neighbor said, maybe we could, I don't know, just enjoy living among pets and not treat it like a Marvel villain origin story. Karen, unfazed, just tapped her pointer on the PowerPoint and said, "This is not about cats. This is about boundaries." I almost lost it when she started handing out laminated cat-free zone stickers for mailboxes. I asked her what would happen if someone didn't put up the sticker. She looked at me dead in the eye and said, "Then don't blame me when they come for you next." It wasn't long before the resistance began. A bunch of us decided to fight back, in the pettiest way possible. We started adding treats to our yards, bought cat-friendly toys, installed little water bowls labeled "Invaders Welcome." Someone even spray-painted a small mural of Whiskers in a superhero cape on the alley wall. We made Cat Lives Matter t-shirts. It was glorious. Karen was furious, called it civil disobedience, and accused us of harboring known infiltrators. She started taking photos of our houses and logging them into her Tactical Concern Journal. That's when things crossed a new line. One morning, I stepped out to find my front porch chalked with messages. "Infiltrator safe house. Complicit with invaders." My mailbox had a sticky note. "They walk because you let them." It was creepy. Funny, sure, but creepy. We decided to confront her. The plan was simple. Community picnic. Block-wide, pet-friendly. Everyone was invited. The whole thing was themed Pause for Peace. We had banners, music, treats, and yes, even costumes. Whiskers wore a tiny night outfit. Luna had a sparkly crown. Pickles came dressed as a pirate. People were loving it. Kids were taking photos. Neighbors were laughing. Karen showed up mid-event, storming through the party like she was the final boss in a sitcom, holding a rolled-up blueprint and yelling about territorial violations. She tried to issue citations. Someone handed her a cupcake. She threw it on the ground and called us all enablers of disorder. Whiskers walked up to her, meowed once, then walked away. That was it. That moment. That look on her face. Defeated. Bewildered. Like she finally realized she wasn't winning this war, not because of strategy or planning, but because no one else was playing. Karen hasn't stopped. She's quieter now. More subtle. still slips notes in mailboxes, still scowls when she sees Whiskers. But the red flags are gone, the signs faded, the watch disbanded, the neighborhood chose the cats. We chose laughter over fear. And every now and then, Whiskers still trots past her lawn, tail high, slow and steady, like he owns the entire block. Which, let's be honest, at this point, he kinda does. And just when you think this is the end, when the storm has passed and the sidewalk is quiet again, there's always that feeling that Karen's still plotting, watching, waiting. Because the next part, let's just say, she's about to take it digital. They say everyone has a story, but not everyone writes it down, laminates it, and files it into a 3-ring binder labeled Evidence Neighborhood Crimes. Karen did. This woman didn't just keep a journal. She maintained a full-blown, meticulously documented diary of delusion, a chronicle of every petty grievance, every cat-related conspiracy, every neighbor who dared to have a personality. And I know all of this because of one fateful garage sale, one curious box labeled Private, Do Not Open, and one neighbor who absolutely did. It started when Karen decided to move, not far, just a few blocks over, closer to the gated community where rules are respected, as she described it. No one really believed she'd go through with it, but the for sale sign went up, and suddenly the entire block was buzzing. We had mixed emotions, relief, confusion, and let's be honest, a bit of sadness. Say what you want about Karen, but she made the neighborhood eventful. As part of her farewell, she hosted a garage sale, not out of kindness, but out of sheer Karen logic. Why leave treasures behind when I can profit from the ungrateful masses? I showed up with coffee and curiosity. Most of the stuff was predictable: framed HOA bylaws, unopened cat repellents, plastic flamingos with red X's on them. But then I saw it. A brown cardboard box tucked beneath a folding table, sealed with duct tape and scribbled across the top in bold red Sharpie, Private, Do Not Open. Naturally, that made it the most interesting thing in the entire yard. And because Karen was inside arguing with someone about coupon expiration dates, I seized the moment. I popped it open just a crack, and that's when I saw it. Dozens of handwritten notebooks, each one dated, tabbed, and color-coded. Curiosity took over. I slipped the top one out and flipped to the first page. The title read, Operation Catnip, How I Was Betrayed by Whiskers, a Neighborhood Menace. I wish I could say I stopped reading, that I respected her privacy. But this wasn't just gossip. This was a psychological goldmine. Every page was dripping in drama. She wrote in third person, gave herself code names like Agent K and Suburban Sentinel. There were entire chapters dedicated to feline espionage, including timestamps, diagrams, and even hand-drawn most wanted posters featuring neighborhood cats. One entry detailed the Great Sidewalk Incident of March 3rd, where Whiskers allegedly made direct eye contact with hostile intent. She included a sketch of the scene, complete with arrows pointing to likely infiltration points. But it didn't stop at cats. Oh no. Karen's diary was an open portal into a mind where everything was a personal attack. She had files on neighbors, passive-aggressive reviews of their lawn decorations, temperature logs of barbecue grills, Bob's cookouts violate the 2 p.m. smoke ordinance, and even critiques of holiday light displays. Flickering reds induce vertigo, possible code breach. She ranked people by threat level. I found my name under Tier 1, Instigators of Chaos. Next to it, Known Associate of Whiskers, Suspected of Sabotage, Smiles Too Much, Possible Sarcasm. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the notebook. Suddenly, Karen reappeared, mid-tantrum over someone offering her $5 for a vintage watering can. I quickly slid the notebook back, sealed the box, and walked away like nothing happened. But I wasn't the only one who saw it. Word got around, fast, and soon, the myth of the Karen diaries began. Someone made a meme. Someone else started narrating fake entries in a dramatic voice. Eventually, the box mysteriously disappeared. No one knew who took it. Rumors spread that it was stolen. Others say Karen burned it in a ritual involving sage and peppermint oil. But then, the uploads began. A new anonymous blog appeared, titled Diary of a Suburban Karen. Each week, a new entry would drop, dramatized, illustrated, even featuring reenactments. It wasn't clear whether these were real pages from her notebooks or parody. Honestly, it didn't matter. People were hooked. Comments flooded in. Readers took sides. Fans of Whiskers versus the Karen loyalists. Even the cats got Instagram accounts. Whiskers had a verified badge within 2 weeks. Karen, unsurprisingly, lost it. She posted cryptic threats about legal action, demanded IP addresses, and even showed up at the HOA meeting with a printout of the blog's homepage yelling, "This is defamation of a civilian hero." She accused the entire neighborhood of cyberbullying. The president of the HOA tried to explain that memes were not federal offenses. She didn't take it well. That same night, someone spray-painted "Cat was here" on her moving boxes. The war may have ended, but the legend, that was just beginning. Because here's the thing. People didn't just laugh at Karen's antics. They felt something. The story, this ridiculous, over-the-top saga of a woman versus a cat, somehow tapped into all of our frustrations with petty rules, passive-aggressive neighbors, and the chaos that bubbles just under the surface of suburban life. Karen was the villain, but she was our villain. And in her obsessive, laminated way, she gave us something to talk about, something to laugh at, something to watch. And now, if you're still here, still listening, still smiling, still wondering what ridiculous thing Karen might do next, then hit that like button, subscribe, because trust me, we're just getting started. There are more entries, more chaos, more cats, and somewhere out there, Karen is planning her comeback, probably in a bunker made of HOA violations. Don't miss it. Welcome to the neighborhood. It's about to get even weirder.